Faster boy, good afternoon. Welcome along to Manx Radio's Mannin Line for Tuesday, 23rd of January. Alex in the chair for Andy, who is discovering that there isn't always a boat in the morning. Let's just say that. I'm sure he'll be back at some point. Anyway, what would you like to talk about today? Open line. Did you hear Julie Edge and Rob Callister talking to Phil yesterday? Do you have any thoughts on the fact that it's not a U-turn? No, it's definitely not a U-turn. Also, 9.5% of the annual budget for DHSC is what they want more of. 6.6% of budget for DESC, 5.2% for infrastructure and 5.5% for home affairs. What am I talking about? Well, we're talking about how Tynwald has been asked to approve supplementary votes, from overspends. Now, I would be interested to hear how this makes sense, okay? See if it says the same thing to you. That if approved, these supplementary votes will result on each department being on budget. I'm willing to be basically put in the light as to how you can overspend, and then when someone gives you more money, you're on budget. Surely you've gone over budget. That's the point. So Department of Health and Social Care wants an extra 30 million. Their budget, by the way, is 313,781,000. The Department of Education, Sport and Culture, 8.9 million extra they want on a budget of 133,803,000. Department of Infrastructure, 5.665 million on their budget of 108,870,000. And Department of Home Affairs, 2.2 million extra on their budget of 39,875,000. So that works out as effectively an increase of 9.5% for Department of Health and Social Care, 6.6% for Department of Education, Sport and Culture. Infrastructure, it's 5.2%, and Department of Home Affairs, it's at 5.5%. Now, we're used to, obviously, the Department of Health and Social Care wanting more money, okay? And there is this debate as to whether it's an overspend or we don't budget enough. But because our budget process means that we're not allowed to go into a deficit of the budget, we just don't give enough money in the budget and we expect a supplementary vote coming round. But in terms of education, infrastructure, home affairs, these are big numbers that they've overspent, okay? And the question is, can Tynwald even say no? Okay, I mean, we're going to come down to another story again where the Department of Infrastructure once again is ignoring what Tynwald said. So the question is, do you feel that this is just a rubber stamp exercise? Why do they even bother? You know, that's the question. Surely they could de-scope some of this stuff without coming to Tynwald like they have done in the past. I would love to know your opinions on it. 6613 at 68 is the number to call. Let's go to a few messages that have been sent in. And, oh, crikey, people sending in text across about 5 different texts. So I'm going to try and get these right. Thank you to texter 653. There was a caller on Friday who claimed that the wind farm plan would cost 700 million over 10 years. I wasn't here on Friday, so I can't officially confirm that or deny that. But if that's the case, this person says that's just scaremongering nonsense. I currently live in Switzerland, where my electricity costs per unit are half that of the Isle of Man. The source, 75% from renewables, 25% nuclear. This means that we should be having nuclear power. Oh, my word. And it means that also we are insulated from energy prices by the fact that we have wind turbines built. Well, thank you for that. That bearing in mind that when we're paying for our electricity, we're still paying off the big loans for the power station, the gas-fired power station we've got there anyway. Okay, those loans are going to continue to be paid for many, many years. So bear that in mind. What else have we got? Thank you very much to Richard, who said, "Hi Alex, Dr. Allenson saying Manx Care has spent 30 million above its budget is somewhat of an understatement. What about the 18 million for dealing with the waiting list they were given from the budget, which has made no difference to the total waiting, as the last figure gave out stayed the same at 12,300 people on the waiting list. Earlier this year, Manx Care said that it were £27 million overspent, which we now hear today is 30 million. This is on top of Manx Care's budget. Yes, I mentioned there the budget total of 313,781. And also, there's no mention by Dr. Allison of the 38 million extra requested by Laurie Hooper last year. So, Question is, are we underfunding the health service? This is a bigger question. Do you want to continue to pay through your taxes for the health service, or would you prefer to go private? If you look at the situations in places like Germany, where you have to take out insurance and you have private healthcare effectively for the population, okay, you've binned off what is the whole basis of the NHS, free at the point of need for everybody, so everybody is entitled to healthcare. You could make savings of hundreds of millions of pounds a year if it was paid for by insurance, personal people insurance, but would the rich be able to afford healthcare? And do you have that two-tier society? Well, these are all questions that I'm sure you all have opinions on. 66 13 68. So let's go back to that announcement this morning, shall we? It's been announced that 4 government departments have overspent their budgets by almost £47 million in the last financial year, bearing in mind we're only in January at the moment. Approval for supplementary votes is going to be sought at next month's sitting of Tynwald in order for them to be brought in or just under budget by the 31st of March. Health and social care spent an additional £30 million. The other departments over budget, as I mentioned, are infrastructure, education, sport and culture and home affairs. So the Treasury Minister, Alex Allinson, has been speaking to Manx Radio's Sean Cowper.
What we've had really is quite an extraordinary year of very high inflation. We've seen the knock-on effects of interest rates. That's affected DOI in terms of their housing deficiency payments. And also we've seen wage increases trying to keep up with that inflation. And that's caused a wave of increased costs. People have noticed it in their pockets. We've noticed it as a government. And as you said, health and social care, because they employ so many people and they've had wage increases, energy cost increases, but also increases to consumables and drugs as well as to off-island transfers for specialist treatment in the UK. All those have added up. So this is a way of trying to balance the books as we finish this financial year and then try to look forward to the next financial year, which I'll be outlining in February with the budget.
So it is a total of around about £47 million for these 4 departments. Where is that money going to come from? OK,
and I'm putting that into context with the Department of Health and Social Care. We're talking about around about 10% of their budget. They've had increased costs to deal with. We are not going to be drawing down from reserves. We can manage this increased spending in terms of the increased revenue that Treasury have been receiving over the last financial year. Obviously, it doesn't please me to have to come forward to Tynwald with this, but we're doing it in an open, transparent way to reflect those increased costs. And I think it is really important that in the next financial year we look at our budgets, we look at the way departments spend, prioritise that spend to actually deliver on those outcomes that people really want, which are things like, as you've described in your various programmes, being able to access GP services, being able to access dental services, those frontline key roles that we really need, particularly in terms of health, but also education and home affairs.
And you talk in your announcement this morning about Treasury needing to work closely with departments to ensure that they continue to exercise strong financial management and control. Has that not happened over the last year then?
It has, but what we're trying to do is put more resources in, give more help and support for those departments to actually identify any risks that may be there, also opportunities, but the risks that may be there in terms of them going over budget. Also share best practice in terms of what's the best way to procure supplies or services throughout government and really drive some of the efficiency savings we've seen, particularly in terms of health and social care, try to get those applied right across the board with all those departments doing the right thing, trying to strengthen that fiscal discipline as we go into the next financial year.
A lot of words there. Okay. What do you think about what the Treasury Minister's got to say? I'm shocked that I'm sure lessons aren't going to be learned from overspending as well. That's the normal government communications textbook, isn't it? And the question I have for you, is this not just a way of cooking the books? Okay, the money's been overspent, so why giving these departments more money to make it look like they're coming in or under budget? Okay, I'd like to hear your opinions because it's your money they're spending. 166 177. And what's the extra money being spent on? Thank you very much to Texter 523 who says, I work for Department of Home Affairs, and at the start of the financial year we were met by the department's bean counters and were told that as a department we would be 2.2 million over budget come the end of the financial year. So it's quite clearly under budget from the off. That's from Justin. Thank you, Justin. Let's be honest, when it comes to budgeting, people do budget, or departments, companies budget almost aspirationally that, yes, we can make the savings as the year goes on. And if we don't, okay, we're not going to come in under budget. But the question is, if you're a business owner, I'm sure you're out there, or if it's your home budget, if you don't have the money, no one's going to step in and sort it out. So you have to control a budget in that way. And if that's not the case, okay, you have to effectively go back for these supplementary votes, or you have to cut a service, or you have to look at your headcount and say, do we have too many people at the top? But the question is, are the people at the top the ones that are expected to make the cuts? Let's have a look at some more of your messages, shall we? 66 13 68 is the number to call. It's all very quiet on the phones today. Have I scared you all off? Do give us a call. It'd be lovely to have a chat to you. Let's have a look. Ali says, Alex, what I find most concerning about the figures for health and social care is the fact that there are hundreds of jobs advertised, infilled for this department, which would give us much better services, but would surely then add further millions to the overspend if we were lucky enough to fill them. We did see some comments on our Facebook page on the story about this. Please do go on to the Facebook page and you can join in the debate on there. But the question is that we're paying 47 million for all these services. You wouldn't mind paying more money if the services were excellent. Okay, so Department of Infrastructure, prime example. I presume we've got lovely roads. Okay, if you have to do the diversion as they redo Braddon Bridge because the TT course and has to be paved in gold, if you have to go round Saddle Road, they're dreadful. It's absolutely awful. But it's okay, we're going to pay millions more to that department. You don't mind paying extra if what you get is good. But the issue is that when it comes to healthcare and infrastructure services on the Isle of Man and other services, all we keep on hearing is we don't have the money. We don't have the money, we don't have the money. So where is the money going? That's the question. 166 177. Bill's been on. Alex, I believe Dr. Allinson's excuses, if you like, but this overspending is purely a lack of financial discipline, nothing else. Sue has been on saying, as I mentioned before, if the health services have gone over budget again, then maybe the budget needs adjusting for this vital service. Well, this is part of the budgetary process, isn't it? The Manx government, by law, has to give you a balanced budget, which means that if health, for argument's sake, is going to cost 400 million, but we can only put in the budget 300 million, they'll do that, they'll nod it through as the budget goes through every February, in the knowledge that by the time we get to the end of the financial year, they're going to need this extra money. But we just weren't allowed to put it in the budget process because of the way the setup is. Here we go. Crikey. Alex, the departments are greedy. No more projects for 3 years. No wind farms, or 5 of them. No southern swimming pool. Everyone is lazy. The NSC is only 29 to 35 minutes away. That's a very exact amount of time. Great experience bus service, if no car. Less on the TT celebrities and move the bus station to the back of Strand Street. It's a large empty space. Taxis and buses together. Okay. Well, interesting. I mean, in terms of things like the no southern swimming pool, I think it's pretty obvious that the people want their swimming pool. That's been very obvious, as they've spoken in the last few weeks. Less on TT celebrities. Well, the TT is in exactly the same boat as the Heritage Railways we've been talking about, which is actually the TT, in terms of income, direct to the department, I would imagine, does not make money. But it makes money from an economic benefit. So if you're not willing to spend stuff, I'll take it to being a shop, okay? If you're not willing to spend on buying stock, you're not going to make the profit from selling it, okay? So you have to still invest in the things that make you money. So thank you very much for that. Let's have a look. Here we go. Government have to act now before we go bust. They have to scrap the lower earning limit on national insurance and raise in 1%. Raise taxed 1%. This won't harm businesses or investment here. They also need to have a major review on public sector pensions. We can't afford it the way it continues to be run. So that's from Pat. Thank you, Pat, for that one. Do you agree with Pat? Do you want to pay a bit more tax? Do you want to pay a bit more national insurance in order to maintain the services we've got? We seem to be desperately trying over the last decade or so not to do that. So we're trying to have, a huge amount of public service paid for by the fact that we're not getting enough income in to pay for it. Tony is on the line. Someone who's going to want to talk to me. I thought I've upset everybody. Good afternoon, Tony.
I haven't upset anybody, have I?
I don't think so. I was talking about me. No one wanted to talk to me today.
Oh, no. I don't think you're upsetting people. The only people you're upsetting are probably the government. So you wouldn't be able to get a government job, or one of those thousands that are advertised. Look, of course, they'd have to consider you because they're not allowed to do that, but they don't often do things they're not allowed to do they? What I suggest is the minister and all his ministers should sit down and say, when we have a budget, here it is, X amount, you as a minister and your department are required by law to come within that budget and, if possible, to reduce it. That would incur the fact that DOI then can't spend money on wasteful projects, and there are dozens of them out there coming, which they're spending a fortune on. Wind farms, which they've got no experience of, and that includes the MUA, who, of course, want to put another undersea line in, but the electricity is coming from somewhere else, we don't know where, because it's not coming from the UK. UK is buying electricity from France at the moment, loads of it, because we haven't got enough generation. So I ask the question, when will the government wake up? When will they get rid of the board that is Manx Care, because that's costing us an arm and a leg for absolutely very little except telling us that it's going to get better? When will they get rid of the pensions for ministers? And I think every minister in government and every person in the MHKs needs to immediately stand up and say, OK, freeze all the pensions, we're not going to have them anymore, because then anybody you employ in the health service or the civil service won't get a final salary pension. You'll be able to justify not having one. Whereas at the moment they all get gold-plated pensions, which nobody in industry does. So if you're running a business, that's one of the things you would do immediately. But he doesn't mention that. What he mentions is, I'm sorry about this, but we're going to have to ask you for more money again. Oh, and don't worry, we're going to borrow some more and we can afford this. How can they afford it?
Well, Tony, I mean, he said there that we're not borrowing it, we're not taking it from reserves. I mean, it almost fits into that thing that, a bit like the Southern Swimming Pool, we're going to close it, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. Oh, wait a minute, we've found the money. There always seems to be money found somewhere, as if they've got a big sofa with a load of wadge of it down the back of it, doesn't it?
Have they got a slush fund we don't know about? Because that's illegal, of course, but they wouldn't have that, that's for sure. But the issue is, let's just get some honesty out there. Let's the minister actually tell us the truth. We're going broke, and the quicker we go broke, the worse it will be. So tell us, right, we're going to cut costs, we're going to do this, that and the other.
What services would you like to see go, Tony? Because the big issue here, it's been mentioned every year we get a supplementary vote, normally for health. This year there's added departments. So the question is, it's very easy to say cut costs, and then everyone will say, well, what do you want to do without? What services do you want to do without? Because when, for argument's sake, one of the first things we noticed after the VAT bombshell over a decade ago was that, hedges aren't being cut back as much on roads, and pavements are all in a right mess, because those are easy things to cut. So when you cut costs, we're cutting services. What ones would you like to see go that don't provide an income to the Isle of Man as a whole?
Well, let me ask you that question rhetorically then. What in the health service doesn't do very much? Manx Care Management.
So who would manage the department? Would you want it to go back to DHSC?
I would get rid of a lot of it. I'd go back to how it was, because it's costing us over £10 million a year just in salaries. And I guarantee if you go and look at the departments now, you'll find they cost a lot more than that.
But you still need people to run things, don't you?
Yeah, but the issue is they had people to run things, and then they added another layer, which is typical government. If you ask the government, how many more people do we have as employed who are going to get final salary pensions, ask them compared to 5 years ago, and it'll be through the roof.
Do you feel that the arm's length organisation theory, because this is one of the things that the Cannon administration seems to be very keen on. Manx Care is, obviously previous to this Parliament, Manx Care is arm's length. The steam packet is arm's length. The sister report, when it came out, the government put on their social media feed that one of the proposals was to have a board of directors for the railways at arm's length. Do you think this is trying to just escape accountability?
Yes, of course it is. It's trying to blame somebody else, ergo the Southern Swimming Pool. Oh, it's not my fault, it's not in my department, but I cut the money for it. How is that right? Why are we funding the NSC, but we can't fund the other swimming pools? It's got nothing to do with how old they are or anything else. It's got to do with, it is not, as somebody has said, a pleasure. It's a requirement for people to learn to swim. It's a requirement for older people to exercise because they can't do weight-bearing exercises. When is this government going to start working out that they have an ageing population? And they need to do something about it. They need to start allowing for people who are older to be available within the systems. Anybody who's old gets treated like a money bag. We'll just take your money off you, but we won't give you anything. We'll just, we haven't got any money left. That's the mantra we always get. We haven't got any money left. Well, where did it all go? That's what you have a budget for. And each minister should be responsible for that budget. And if he fails the budget, he needs to resign. And he needs to resign as an MHK as well.
Do you feel then that the ministers that are asking for, in your opinion, you feel that the ministers who are putting forward the money for this supplementary budgets, they should fall on their swords because of it?
Correct. If they can't manage the system that they are in charge of such that it works, and it might not work perfectly, but it works, and not trying to get to a target, but get it to just work, and not fill in forms so that you can get little bits of paper that say how many percentage of this or that, which is what they do. That's all they're interested in. They're not interested in your health. They're interested in what percentage it is. And how many people have got to sign for one prescription, and it just goes on and on and on. It's unbelievable.
Okay, Tony.
We're complicating the life out of ourselves for no good reason except to justify people doing nothing except shuffling paper. And if the ministers can't control it, they need to resign from the ministry, and they need to resign as an MHK and give up their pensions, because that's what they're in there for.
Okay, Tony. Well, thank you for that. Tony's opinion there on the budgeting process. Do you have a different opinion? I'm sure there are people who do. 66 13 68 is the number to call if you feel differently. Bonzo's on. Oh, time for a bit of wokiness. Hello, Bonzo. How are you?
Hello, yes. Well, I'm not going to actually go totally woke today.
Oh, you disappoint me.
No. I'm going to have some fiscal responsibility.
Oh, far away.
Yeah, right. Okay. I mean, a fair amount of what Tony is saying is yes, something I can heartily agree with. However, the thing is, it isn't that simple. If only it were, then it could be done. But it's a bit of an issue. I mean, first off, having ministers fall on their swords and be sacked as MHKs and be forfeit their pensions if they go over budget. Yes, I'd like to see how much that will cost us in legal fees. Doesn't he remember ransom?
Do you feel that, I'm going to try and keep this to the point and brief, but do you feel that things like that, an MHK should fall on their sword? Julie Edge has been called to resign today because of the Southern Swimming Pool. Do you feel that's just something that makes us feel better rather than, it's more of a heart over head? It makes us feel better if someone did that, but doesn't solve the problem.
Well, in regards to Julie Edge, I mean, I was listening to questions in House of Keys earlier, and Julie Edge was just trotting out the usual Mannin Line. You hear it from Allington, you hear it from Cannon, you hear it from Lord Brennan, you hear it from Tim Johnson, you hear it from Tim Crookall. It's this, we are right. All Tynwald members except Comin are wrong. You're not reading the briefs properly. You can't read the accounts. You don't understand. And I'm afraid it's actually the members of Comin, largely, who do not understand. And Julie Edge is leading the charge of people who don't understand. And whether she has been, because she doesn't understand, unintentionally misleading and disingenuous, or whether she has been intentionally misleading or disingenuous, doesn't matter either way. She still behaved in a way where she should be clearing her desk.
And if she doesn't clear her desk on her own behalf, do you feel that the Chief Minister should...
Yes, I think there will be increasing pressure in Tynwald for the Chief Minister to clear her desk for them.
The question is, Bonzo, I mean, looking at the Parliament we've got now and where we're at within this Parliament and the government itself within the Parliament. If you said there's been a lot of discussion after the Jersey and Guernsey throwing out their chief minister, and you sit there going, well, this government is the worst one you've had in years, and you trot out all those lines that lots of people say anecdotally. What's Plan B? Because they've only got the public put in to Tynwald, or the public put into the House of Keys, in fact, the members they vote for. And then, who they vote for to be Chief Minister has only got to work with a certain number of people. So, in your mind, what's Plan B? If we're not happy with the current government, you're only moving around musical chairs, aren't you?
Well, unless we can have a change of administration before the election, then Plan A will continue, and it will be like General Milchit said, the plan is for everyone to die until only General Haig's wife and their tortoise Gerald are left alive. And that's essentially Cannon's view. Obviously, other General Milchit quote, yes, it's only by refusing to face facts that we can overcome the situation.
So if you say a change of administration, then what is Plan B? Because you have to have a vote of no confidence in the administration. Are there enough other members with the vital experience? This is it, because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. A lot of the time.
I can think of two or three people who are immediately. I can think of 2 or 3 people who would have the necessary skills.
Right, okay.
And experience, and you're talking about people like Jane Paul Wilson and Chris Thomas.
So, in terms of the budgetary process, which is what we started this conversation on, how do you see this going forward? Is this becoming an annual thing that we should get used to because we don't budget enough, or is there a panacea that basically the politicians are looking at?
Well, as I've said before, it's not that the money isn't available; it's Tynwald chooses not to raise it, because it has this welfare state attitude that the more money you have, the more you should benefit from government exemptions and largesse. We have about 5% of our GDP, which we could tax and could go to all those things that we need, such as the hospitals, swimming pools, fixing the roads, everything. But we choose not to raise it. It's an active choice by government.
Why do you think that is, Bonzo? Because unlike, the UK Parliament, unless there are huge secret slush funds, that I look at the makeup of the House of Keys, and we haven't got billionaires sitting in there that have got these massive incomes and accounts everywhere, who would do better from not raising money from the top percentage of society. So why don't they go for that? Why don't they have that more liberal view on taxation?
Well, I think quite a few MHKs actually do have friends who are in excess of £100 million. And such like, for one example, of course, wasn't it Baroness Moan and John Barrowman, who were constituents of Alf Cannon? So, yes, there are plenty of millionaires, I think, having words in people's ears.
Ah, well, that's a different matter, because that effectively is gossip and rumour as well, isn't it? Because you sit there and go, well, they're bound to have had a word, or they've bound to have done this. Yet there's a difference between someone having a word and officially lobbying. So you can't create government policy on that.
In our system, of course, the difference is very, 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 very blurred.
It is. That's a very good point. Right, I'm going to move on, Bonzo, but great to talk to you. I'll probably speak to you again tomorrow.
I'll take a break.
Oh, okay. Well, nice to speak to you, Bonzo. Always lovely to have Bonzo on. He did well there, 6 minutes. Not bad for Bonzo. Right, I'm going to get to some of your messages on the text in a moment. If you want to talk about anything, including the government overspent, the southern swimming pool, the fact that the Manxman is sitting out at sea, chugging up and down because she can't basically be safely, I was going to say contained, safely berthed in Douglas Harbour during storm weather. Or the fact the DOI hasn't got round to sorting out 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. All of these are topics in the news. I'd love to hear from you. 66 13 68.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
Righty-ho, you tune to Manx Radio's Mannin Line. It's 20 to 1. Let's go and have a look at some text, shall we? And do feel free to give me a call, once again, 66 13 68, about any of the topics we're talking about today. Andy says, Alex, someone needs to ask this government why they're giving ACU events £2 million to run the TTMGP. The vast amount of this money going off-island. Fact! Once again, Andy, a text in from someone who might have found something on the internet. Not fact, but that I would argue whatever amount of money is being paid to the ACU, it's being paid to run the event. I mentioned this earlier on. Very similar. Railways, TT, they're in the same boat, really, that the department has to pay money for the whole of the island to benefit. Okay, so there is economic benefit. So I can't remember the top of my head, but say the TT brings in 30 million a year. Okay, that 30 million doesn't go into the Department for Enterprise. The Department for Enterprise will spend that however many millions, paying the ACU for this, paying for that, paying for everything else that's involved in organising the event, and then the rest of the island benefits from the economic income, I'd imagine. Thank you to Texter 068 who says, I agree with Tony. A lot made up of paper shuffling jobs for people who actually don't do anything very useful. Opinion or fact? Okay, people like to do that, don't they? Lots of civil service. I mean, you know, I'm one person who does criticise certain government departments, but civil servants are doing a job. They don't just sit there with their feet up all day. The question is, do we want those jobs fulfilled? Okay, and that's a completely different thing. Andy says, Hi Alex, I agree 110% with Tony. The Chief Minister and Comyn are on Fantasy Island and out of touch. Julie Edge should do the honourable thing and go. If she doesn't, how honourable is she? Oh, I see what you're putting out there. Thank you. Also, Mike says Julie Edge should be sacked and not asked to resign. What have we got here? David says, a few years ago it was decided to stimulate the economy. A number of millions was to be invested in projects by the Department of Economic Affairs. That, as it turned out, they were unable to spend it all, so the job of spending was given over to the DOI as they were better placed to achieve all the spending. Is that true? I don't recall that one, David. Thank you. We'll look into that, but it sounds a little strange that we haven't spent our budget. Do you want it, DOI? You can spend it better. Things like you're sounding a bit tongue in cheek there. Let's have a look. Hi, Alex. You have to remember that MHKs come and go, but the civil servants don't. They stay the same. So unless the MHK is starting to take charge, nothing will happen. That's from Hillary. It's a very good point, actually. Because you do find this, of course, if you ever watch Yes, Prime Minister, possibly one of the best documentaries into the running of government you'll ever see, if an MHK comes in as a minister and says, I want to change this, all the civil servant has to do, if they're in a position of power and don't want to do the change, is just draw it out until that minister moves on. And then they get their own way. That is, as you point out there, Hillary, something that could be an issue. There we go. Hi, the responsibility for budgets in departments rests with the senior civil servants and in the private sector, they'd be looking for another job. That's a very good point. Thank you very much, actually, for texter 980, who says, Barrowman and Moan lived in St Mark's, so how are they Alf Cannon's constituents, Bonzo? There you go. It's good to get that back, so thank you very much. You see, difference between fact and opinion. Now, a Douglas Central MHK has accused the Department of Infrastructure of showing complete disregard by ignoring a Tynwald resolution. Again! Horsetrams, bus station. The list is growing, and this time it's in relation to speed limits around the Isle of Man. Anne Corlett wants to see the introduction of 20-mile-an-hour speed restrictions in residential areas. The DOI was supposed to release a report in March 2021, and again last year, but hasn't, with Minister Tim Crookall citing changes in the department as one of the reasons why. However, Mrs Corlett told Manx Radio that this report should be a priority.
This was a Tynwald resolution, agreed unanimously, twice, that speed limits in residential areas, specifically around schools, all island, should be implemented, and their task was to report back on how they would do that. And we're still waiting. One of the problems about implementing a 20-mile-an-hour limit is actual enforcement taking place. So you have to design roads, which is presumably where the Ballacameen pilot proposal came, to actually slow traffic down. Yeah, but I think really there's an alternative to that, isn't it? We could lower the speed limit, put the signs up and address the problems where they occur, rather than trying to preempt them. Let's see what happens. And yes, there is a problem with well, actually, I don't think there is a problem with enforcement. There's no different enforcing 20 mile an hour than enforcing 30, 40, 50, 60. It's exactly the same enforcement.
Do you think we should introduce speed cameras?
Absolutely. And that could have been part of, I guess, of the consultation process that was around Ballacameen, but that's a very small one. But yeah, let's go out and ask people, would they agree with that?
Because I think sometimes part of the problem is people don't like the speed, but then they don't like the solutions either.
I suppose we're all guilty in a way of, no, I don't want people driving fast by my house, but I'll drive fast by yours. That's human nature, isn't it? I do think if we just reduced, even if they did it in the central Douglas area around Ballacameen, to just trial it, that's not an expensive thing to do. Change the legislation, put up the signs.
Were you convinced by Minister Krugel's answers?
Absolutely not. Do you know what? I just really think that the department is actually showing a complete disregard for a Tynwald resolution, and that's not acceptable. And okay, if they haven't had the time or ability to do a full report, come back with progress, or not. If there is no progress, come back and tell us why. But don't just ignore a Tynwald resolution. That is not right.
There you see. It's that same record, isn't it? The DOI ignoring what they've been told by Tynwald. Okay? Tynwald is the highest court of the land. And is there any, comeback on it? They just ignore Tynwald and we go, and just move on. Okay. If the minister is listening, okay, Invisible Tim, we'd love to hear from you if you'd like to actually reply to any emails inviting you to the Mannin Line, or to basically talk to us about the fact that your department is basically showing complete disregard by ignoring a Tynwald resolution, according to Anne Corlett, who's the Douglas Central MHK. Right, a few more texts coming in. I'll get to those in a moment. Also, I'm going to talk about... thank you very much to Rob Collister, actually, MHK, who's messaged saying, Alex, in answer to Tony's question, I didn't stand for MHK because of the pension benefits. The days when MHKs receive a free golden pension are well gone. I pay around £6,000 into my pension as an MHK each year, and I'll be receiving around 20 to 25% less benefits than previous elected members. And happy to clarify that position. Thank you very much, Rob. Very good to hear from you. Let's go back to the phone lines. And John is on the phone. Hello, John. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Alex. How are you?
I'm not so bad, sir. How are you?
I don't know yet. Too early. Haven't woken up yet.
I wish I was feeling the same. Crikey.
Yes. I hear you on the radio saying, people phone in. Phil Gorn was saying that, it's your programme. Please phone in. But yet I also hear you reading out messages from other people saying, we're sick of the usual 5 contributors and, it's becoming the Mannin Line. So what I want to complain about is where are all these other people? Why aren't they phoning in?
It's a good point that you do get people who complain like crazy that it's the same old people on the phone lines, and we don't edit anybody. Everyone is welcome to ring in. So if they don't want the same old regulars, it's going to be a very quiet programme unless they pick up the phone like you've done and give us a call with their opinions on anything, really.
But that said, isn't it a case of, they're not happy unless they're complaining?
Well, I think most phone-in programmes, quite frankly, I think you find a very... you'd have a bit of challenge to find a phone-in programme from any radio station around the world where people aren't ringing in with a negative comment rather than a positive phone-in, because, quite frankly, people are always wanting an issue sorted, aren't they? I don't think many people contact their MHKs and say, I just wanted to contact you because I think the flower beds in the village are lovely. They always want something dealt with. I think that's, quite frankly, just the part of the score, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose you could say that's true, but if you think back, I think it was a Friday or something like that when you were on, and this lady phoned up talking about tinfoil hats and the Incas and all of that. Do you remember that one?
I do, certainly, yes. Yeah. The lack of the mail plane might have brought down the Incas.
Well, exactly. I mean, so there was a bit of a humour there, a bit of light-hearted happiness and everything else. But then at the same time, you asked her, what would she do if she was in control? Well, I think you just asked her husband what she would do. But I'm quite sure that she would actually sort out the problem, so to speak, now with government. Because from what I understand, she sounded very, very firm. And I'm quite sure she'd turn around and say the civil servants could only have a 4-year term. maximum of twice. Thereafter, they can't apply for the same job again. Various things like that.
Well, I'll flip that on its head, John, and say that one issue that is brought up is that there's no what they call corporate memory. So actually, many years ago, we had the Mars scheme when we were getting rid of people from the civil service. They were offered effectively golden handshakes to depart so we could get the head count down, we could cut down on the wage bill. But the problem is that you lose people with that experience. So suddenly you've got people who don't know the island in jobs and you've got people who don't remember when we last made those mistakes.
True, but then I'll flip that on its head. When I first came to the island many, many, many years ago, somebody said to me, the best advice I was ever given was to find myself a quiet little government managerial job somewhere hidden away and I'll be made for life. And that is the case, and he's still down at the airport now.
All right. Don't dob him in any further, John, whatever you do. I mean, there is that opinion, but also, I suppose we could...
No, that's not an opinion. That's what he said to me.
Yes, but, okay, that perception, of that being the case across the board. But there is this element that we are a small jurisdiction. We expect services to the level of what we would expect in the UK and larger jurisdictions. And I suppose if we want those services, we have to pay for them through taxation because a lot of them aren't commercially viable.
True, but at the same time, an awful lot of money is just wasted. This is going to be very, very contentious. But the government is there. Well, I've asked this question before to other people. What is the purpose of government? Is the purpose of government to be subservient to the international community and say, well, we have to start building wind turbines, spending in excess of £40-odd million, give or take, it depends on how far it goes? Or do you say, well, that 40 million could go to the health service? What is the government there to do?
And what's your opinion on that one?
Well, I think it should go to the health service.
Okay, good point.
I mean, you just think about the people living on the island. We haven't got any dentists, yet you want to go and spend 40-odd million on wind turbines to be able to say to the world, hey, world, guess what? Pat on the back. I'm Elf Cannon. I want my MBE because other people got it during COVID and I didn't. So if we can now say, oh, well, we're net zero, aren't we brilliant? But at what cost to the people actually living here?
Well, that's a whole different thing because you're making that sound like that's a choice between glory or priorities on that front.
It is.
Well, do you feel then it's about government priorities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Without a doubt, and it's not just government, but it's also civil servants. I went down to the meeting with the wind turbines that was down at the school down the south here, and the guy jumped up from the government and he said, we have to do this, we have to build these wind turbines, we have to be net zero, because if we don't, all the big companies on the island, all the international companies are going to leave.
But if that's different than obviously getting a tick box from other jurisdictions. In terms of companies that are investing in the Isle of Man, that's people's jobs, that's bringing money into the island. So if companies are sitting there going, we want to work in a jurisdiction that is considered responsible and has green credentials, surely that's something we should be fostering, isn't it?
Yes, but not at the expense of the people. That's the problem. So if we haven't got any dentists and we haven't got the money for dentists, and the Treasury Minister keeps saying, well, the money isn't there, but hang on, we can go and spend 40 million on wind turbines, we can go and dig up Castletown Bay, which is, a protected area, and to say, oh, look, we're green, but we still haven't got dentists, and yet you've got children whose teeth are falling out because the parents aren't looking after them. And then somebody in government says, oh, well, we need to fluoride all the water. To me, it's all a bit backwards. That's why I say, get that lady back in with a tinfoil hat. She'll sort it all out.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, John. Maybe I can't remember the lady's name now. I do apologise if she's listening, but maybe her for Chief Minister. Who knows? But thank you, John, for your call. Great to talk to you, and please do call again. Okay, that'd be lovely to talk to you. And I think we're pretty much nearly out of time, but Andrew's on the line, wanting to talk about horse trams. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Alex. Firstly, hope 2024 is good, kind, healthy and rewarding for you.
Yeah, likewise.
I don't have it in front of me, but Mr. Tim Krugall's name was mentioned 2 calls ago, and I don't have it in front of me. Last week's Manx Independent newspaper about the horse trams, and effectively Minister Tim Krugall saying doesn't look as though they're going to run because the buildings are unsafe.
This was a response... Sorry, go on.
Yep. No, you carry on.
I was going to say this was a response in Tynwald last week when they were discussing Tramway Terrace, and there was the debate off the question as to what the DOI has done and whether the DOI has been in the building to inspect it. And Tim Crookall said that they haven't because of health and safety. Although I haven't managed to find a prohibition order on the building in that case. But I think from memory, it was something along the lines of if this situation isn't sorted, your horse trams won't run.
Correct. So I think most people who are in favour of the horse trams will agree over the conspiracy theory that there is a movement within that department to just not have the horse trams. And Minister Crookall is there ignoring the will of Tynwald, and surely, where there's a will, there's a way. All they should do is put some RSJs around the entrance to the stables so that the buildings don't come down on the arch. The archway doesn't come down, block the entranceway, injure anybody. Put that in. Where there's a will, there's a way. And obviously, Minister Tim Crookall has no will, because otherwise he'd find a way to do it. And that's all we have to say on that.
I mean, in terms of the DOI, once again, I feel I need to clarify this, that the DOI in terms of the management of the department, because I think in terms of the workers in the department who've been out over the last few days, clearing trees, I think they do superhuman efforts.
Correct.
And this is not aimed at them. But in terms of the management of the DOI, it's another day of a story of the Department of Infrastructure ignoring a Tynwald resolution.
Correct.
And how do you feel we solve this situation? Because if you point out there that
the minister just has to instruct the chief executive, this is what needs to be done, go away and do it. You've got this time scale to do it, come back and confirm to me that you've done it. If you haven't done it, well, the person's incompetent.
Do you feel
they should face a competency test? Get rid of them.
Well, do you feel that maybe the minister and the council of ministers, I mean, where do you feel that this feeling against, on specifically horse trams or on other issues like speed limits or bus station and things that the DOI have been told to do?
They're just the ministers. It's quite clear the civil service are directing things. Chief Minister Coman, Tynwald members, they may think they know what they're doing and that they're in charge, but they're not. It's just exemplified by the fact that Tynwald's will is not followed.
And it is the highest court of the land, I suppose, isn't it?
Correct. Why are people not called to the bar of Tynwald, the chief executives? Why have you not done this?
And you know what? I think that's a good point to end on. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Alex. Cheers now.
Well, it's good to have a bit of a passionate debate at the end there. I am back tomorrow. Andy, I'm sure, will still be on the high seas somewhere. We'll get him back at some point. You'll be able to listen to this Mannin Line again if you missed any of it as a podcast. Thank you very much to Barry Redfern on the phones today. And if you're tuning in tomorrow and you're a new caller, I'd love to have a chat with you. Call nice and early on 66 13 68. I shall be back at 3 o'clock with the other persona, as it were. Stick around. Tom Kane is up next. Tommy C with 1 to 3. Stay safe in the weather. I'll speak to you later. Ta-da.